How you doing and welcome to my home. You're gonna see some probably crazy cats running around here. There's really not much I can do about it. They let me stay here. So I'm kind of at their mercy. It's their house. Um, what I'd really like to say is, I really appreciate everybody watching this stuff because there's been many points in my life where I never thought I'd ever be here, and to have this, just everything about it, everything about life to me is amazing. And I'm just grateful for it every day. And I'm grateful for the support more than anything. And grateful that, people, you know, have a desire to see this type of content. So today, we've been into a lot of things so far, getting back into, the life of living in prison and what daily life is. So today we're going to talk about visits. I need a sip of coffee for that because I've had so much drama in my life with visits. First of all, from your standpoint, or the visitor's standpoint, right? Not the person in prison. It's a pretty long and arduous process. You can't just walk into a prison. Anyway, in the feds, you could in some of these pretrial places, right? So Wyatt, you could just go in and show an ID because it was glass. This visit was behind the glass partition, and I held a phone and my visitor held a phone. And we just talked, really. So there was nothing that could be done clandestinely. Nobody could slip anybody anything. It was very very secure facility, even for a pretrial facility. And, but visits, they vary, and everybody always asks about like trailer visits, right? Conjugal visits. You can have them in two institutions, I believe, in two different states. One's in New York and one's California. So you have to get to that specific institution to actually have a conjugal visit. I've never had them. They're only offered in two states, and I was in the feds. So at Wyatt, there was nothing like that at all. I'm saying you couldn't even touch a person. Now, but you get to the feds, the visitor, has to fill out a visiting form. I don't know if anybody can see that, right? On the back, it's basically a dress code. But the dress code is so ambiguous that one week they'll let you in wearing something and the next week they won't. So let's start from the beginning. You send this visiting form, and you, the visitor, wants to visit somebody in federal prison. You send the visiting form in, and it gets sent to a counselor. And when they have time, usually within a week or two, they will do a background check, figure it out, and either give you approval or deny you. You have to list every felony. If it was a drug conviction, you're probably not getting in unless you're immediate family, and that takes time for them to okay that too. So after you fill the visiting form out, after it's approved, let's say, then I get notification I get an addendum to my visiting list. They'll send me a new visiting list, and when you get a visiting list, you look, who's new on it, right? Some institutions, you can only have 10 visitors. Some institutions, it's 20. Some institutions, it's unlimited. There's a policy of how many you can have. I think it's 10. I'm not 100% sure, but there is policy and there is limitations. But in some institutions, they're more lax than others. Some institutions, when you get there, you got to fill all brand new visiting lists out. Some institutions, they just carry over. It just depends basically if there's a paper file that supports the visitor that you want. So that's basically administrative stuff, and I really don't know nothing about it. Only know through experience and what has happened to me throughout the years. So your visit's approved, say. You're getting a visit. Now, people have to, you call on the phone, on the wall phone, when you're coming up, you make a time, okay. Visiting is, in most institutions, it was Tuesday and Thursday weren't visits, but Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday were visits. However, when I got to Lee County Penitentiary, there was only visits on Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday because it was such a remote location. So they vary. And then, on these websites, you get on these websites now and see like when the visiting hours are. Some of them are archaic. Like some websites haven't been, updated in 20 years, 15 years. It's crazy. Because I know my ex-wife at the time, she had said that, oh no, there's night visits in Fort Dix. And they had done away with night visits like 10 years before I got there. And it was still on the website. So don't be fooled. If you want to know exactly what's going on, talk to somebody that's been in the jail recently. Because things change daily. So your visit's approved. You're talking to your visitor. Hey, you're making arrangements to come up. Now, for you, the visitor, right, it's traveling, right? So you got to travel to get there no matter where the place is. I know my ex-wife had to travel to these crazy places. She was up in the tip of Tennessee, Kentucky, and Virginia. Dark, crazy, right? Money spent, gas, lodging, food at the visiting room. So, it's all these things that, it's a lot of expenses. On our end, on the, the convicts end, waiting. See, there's one of them cats I'm talking about right now. Straight Hamas terrorist. But the waiting game, like, so you're waiting. Somebody's coming at like 9 o'clock. Now they have to go get processed. So now you're waiting. Now you're anxious. You're in your visiting uniform. You're walking around. You're waiting to hear. Did I hear it? Maybe keep asking the cop. They call me. So it's just a mental tug of war going on. And so usually, you're going to get processed. You, the visitor, you get patted down. That's randomly, like say every 20 people, then maybe have a female officer to pat the females down. They just look at your ID. If it matches up on the computer because you've already been approved, then you got to fill out paperwork, saying that you don't have no drugs on, just all this stuff that you would think that would happen, right? You would just fill out procedural paperwork. And, then the next step of the process is they would call you in. Maybe the visiting room was full. They asked some people to leave, and then if not, mandatorily, they'll throw people out of the visiting room based upon your geographical situation as it pertains to, closeness to the prison. If you live 5 miles away from the prison, you're going to get thrown out first. If you live 100 miles away from the prison, 200 miles, you're going to get the last boot. You know what I'm saying? Because you've traveled a long way to get there. So now, when your visitor does get approved at the front desk, then they'll call me over the loudspeaker. They'll call the convict. They'll say, Bartolomeo, you have a visit. Okay. So now I make my way to the visiting room. Now, if it's depending on the security level, so penitentiaries, you get strip searched going in a visit and out of the visit. And it's a pretty dicey situation only because the strip searches ain't, whatever, it's a strip search, you kind of always make fun of the officer that's doing it. Go like, really? You look between your legs like, you like doing this? So, but I'm sure everybody has done it because it's, it's a compromising situation, right, for both people. I don't think anybody really likes it except, maybe the few that do like it, who knows. But I never liked it, you know what I'm saying? It's just always an uncomfortable situation. But whatever, it's just part of the game. So, like I say all the time, I went to jail. Before I went to jail, everybody else was the sucker. When I got there, I became the sucker, right? So, you get strip search in and out. So you get strip searched. Now you go into the visiting room and they'll sometimes assign seats, or sometimes you can just pick wherever you want, depending on if the visiting room's crowded or not, or what the situation is. But some institutions, they have, different rules. I remember in Fairton one time, they wanted to make you go into the visiting room, and then the next person sat right next to you with a whole open visiting room. That didn't last long. But they're just some of the craziest stuff in the whole world, these institutions do. Anyway, you get into the visit, and depending on the time, because the visits usually go from say 8 to 4, but 4 o'clock is count, so they end the visits at 3. So you usually get in there from 9 to 3, depending, on where you're at and how many people are there, and depending on your people's schedule. If they're just stopping in for an hour, you can stop in for an hour. So, you can buy refreshments. They have vending machines there. You can buy soda, you can buy coffee, depending, again, on the institution. Every institution is different. Every institution probably has different vendors they go to, but they're vending machines. So in most times, those vending machines are owned by like retired officers, and they do the vending, and it's somehow connected. I mean, everything is connected really in them places. So in the feds, you could kiss once on the way in, give your people an embrace, and then you couldn't touch them after that. And sometimes they would be sticklers for that. Sometimes you would make arrangements, you could do other stuff, extracurriculars, what I'm saying, when the cop wasn't looking, or, because they usually have one officer, and then they'll have a few officers, maybe walking around, but it's usually just two officers working the visiting room. One's doing all the checking in, the other one's just kind of doing surveillance. And there's always cameras. Of course, there's cameras in every visiting room, and there's, the investigators watch the cameras, whether it be live or afterwards. So, a lot of people use visits where they transfer contraband in there and stuff. I've never done that, nor would I ever do it. I wouldn't put my people at risk like that. And, I've heard of people, smuggling drugs and Pampers and, babies, clothes. And, a lot of why the prison officials do what they do is because they've seen a lot of stuff, obviously, that I haven't, right? So I guess sometimes when it seems like it's overbearing, because a lot of times I thought it was overbearing, that sometimes that it is justified because of the situations, prison officials have kind of, seen, right? They've seen the craziest shit. But I remember in visiting rooms, my ex-wife used to bring like 3 or 4 different outfits because they would always have a problem. Oh, that's too revealing. You can't wear something like that. Despite the fact that my ex-wife had seen other people wearing that in a visit beforehand, and that's how she got the idea, she would wear it the next time, and they would be like, "Oh, you can't wear that." So a lot of times too, it's crazy, arbitrary situations that arise in these visiting rooms. Who knows what goes on in the minds of other people? I don't know. But it has been arbitrary many times, with my wife getting denied visits, or ex-wife getting denied visits, or the thing she was wearing wasn't, acceptable, and she'd have to go out and change, come back. They make people go to the store, buy an outfit, and come back. Really, so I guess maybe sometimes it's warranted, but a lot of times it's really frustrating. And, now you're waiting, and, sometimes those frustrations build up, right? You've been waiting, your visitor had to go to a store, then they come back. So, you start the visit off where everybody's aggravated, right? So it's kind of not a good place to be. It's not like that all the time, but sometimes it is that way. Sometimes people get denied at the door. I remember one time it was my fault when, Rain Man came to see me, but I didn't update my list, and I went to another institution and he wasn't on the list, and I thought he was, and he got denied at the door. It was my fault, right? I didn't do the proper planning and get him on my list. But there was another visitor that came with him, and we ended up having a little talk and stuff in a visit, but Rain Man couldn't get in, which was a nightmare. And now he's dealing with his own nightmare right now. But so the visit, it's always seems like, hey, you want to come up and visit? A lot goes into it. Sometimes you might never even make it in the door, because you could be denied because of your record, could be denied by the type of crime that you had, maybe. And we know in today's day and age, right? Not many people that haven't been touched by the justice system. So it's hard to find, people that have 0 record, right? Of course, there are people that are in that category. But, there's a lot of people that we know, that we touch, that, have a record, that have been in trouble with the law, or have certain, situations in their lives, or their families, and they're judged by that. So that could work against you when you're going to visit somebody, because a visit is not a right. To have a visit is a privilege. And then also, your visits could be taken for a disciplinary sanction, right? So you could get in trouble and they could take your visits for 90 days. That's happened more frequently than not with a disciplinary sanction. The only thing you have a right to is your good time, and you can challenge your good time because it's your freedom, right? So that's, you have a due process right to fight for the time that you would possibly be free when they take your good time. How successful you are, well, it depends how good you are, and maybe we'll get into that a little bit too. I've had a lot of success institutionally in the institution with fighting disciplinary infractions, fighting grievances that I was pretty successful at, more consistent and more successfully consistent or consistently successful than a lot of other people. But I'll end by saying that, a lot of things go on in the visiting room, and you can get kind of away with a lot of stuff, but everything has a consequence. So you could actually, I've had my visits terminated at Lee County because they said I inappropriately touched my ex-wife. And it wasn't. And there's a long story that goes along with it. And maybe we can get into that later. But that's basically what you have to look forward to with a visit. You have to get approved. You have to get there. Once you get there, you have to go through hoops to get there. Once you're sitting in the visiting room, you can have snacks. You can have, coffee. You can talk. But it's loud, right? I'm saying you're not in a private setting. You're in a room full of people. It's like being in a bar room having a visit. And you can't touch your people, You can touch them once. You can hug them once. And again, that goes by institution. So some officers are more considerate than others. Some are, there's been a few plain assholes that I've dealt with. Officer Kegley from Lee County was the worst officer I've ever dealt with in my life. And, that's the exception to the rule. Kegley was the exception. The 99.9 percentile of people and officers that I've dealt with have been, decent folks. From decent to not bad. And we used to say the worst they could be was a decent jerk. So, but, I've had a good rapport with a lot of people, and I've had a lot of, easy times in prison. And the visits were, a good time for me, but they were emotionally draining, right? I'd rather not get visits at the end, right? At the end of my sentence, I was just like, let me just get home, But that's it for today. Continue to comment, to like, to share, and to subscribe to the channel. And I got this crazy cat in the background. Thank you for watching.